This is the Content Strategy Insights podcast, episode number 180. The field of content design attracts professionals from a variety of backgrounds and brings them together in one of the most cohesive and generous communities that I've ever been a part of. As AI sucks the oxygen out of the room and companies discard content talent at an alarming rate, we need all the camaraderie and generosity that we can muster. Nicole Michaelis brings a thoughtful leadership style and deep professional experience to these challenging times.
Welcome to the Content Strategy Insights podcast, where accomplished content strategy experts share their wisdom with our friends in the content community. Our mission is to democratize content strategy, to make its principles and practices accessible to everyone. And now, here's your host, Larry Swanson.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode number 180 of the Content Strategy Insights podcast. I am really delighted today. Welcome back to the show, Nicole Michaelis. Nicole is one of the best-known content leaders, I think, in the field. She works for a big product company. And welcome, Nicole. Tell the folks a little bit more about what you're up to these days.
Hi, Larry. Thanks for having me again. It's been a while. I think definitely an episode in the under the hundreds. So I'm very excited to be back. What am I up to these days? So I'm a content design leader at a big product company, like you said. And I generally reflect a lot, and I recently wrote an article about my content design focus areas for the year because I think it's really, really important to pick a couple of main focus points so you not, get too scattered and too excited about too many different things. And actually, it's also relatively new to me to be a lead. Originally, when I got this role, I was hired just as a staff content designer. And then after just a couple of weeks, my boss said, hey, you know what? You have what it takes to lead this discipline here. They promoted me to lead. And since then, I've been hiring and firing and budgeting and planning for headcounts. And I also have the privilege and challenge that localization also reports into content design where I work, which also has come with a lot of learnings. So I decided to really try to focus specifically for content design this year on just a couple of things. The first one, of course, being AI. Everyone talks about it. And I've, also been looking into things, thinking about things. We've had a lot of discussions about maybe getting tooling to support content design to help us scale the discipline. But we've also been looking into other things where AI can help us. Maybe it's around, generating better briefs. Maybe it's around, figuring out how we can localize things already in a Figma file without having to wait for like a later localization step. So that's definitely something that's top of mind for me. Then there's a couple of other things that are related to process. I think we are in economic times where content design teams really need to look at how to best scale with like a smaller amount of resources and maybe even a smaller amount of people. So that's definitely something I'm thinking about a lot. And then there were a couple of other points, but the one point I also want to call out here is that I'm very passionate about wanting to be a very thoughtful and authentic leader. And if you follow me anywhere on the internet, you can see that I write a lot. And I also have my podcast, Content Rookie, where I just share a lot of what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling, and I definitely want my leadership style to be infused with that as well. And when I first became a lead, I actually struggled finding leadership resources for content designers. I know we have a lot of great content design leaders already out there, and I connected with a lot of them and had great conversations. But I realized that in my role specifically for this product company, where I'm responsible for the part of it that is international, so technically not US based, it comes with a lot of challenges that I have to think about that maybe content design leaders that are mostly working in English in the US market don't have to think about. So I really also want to make sure that I can potentially create resources for other content designers looking to get into leadership. That was a very long-winded intro. I hope I covered the most important.
Great. And I love that it wasn't just a recantation of, because the reason I invited, when you talked about thoughtful leadership, that's why I asked you on this. We've known each other a long time. And then you did your last podcast episode. I was like, I got to talk to her again about this because I love that you have your own thing, but your own voice, and your own platform. But I always want to amplify you and get this stuff out there. But hey, I want to come back because, the first thing, AI, you mentioned that. I feel obligated. Let's just get that out of the way. We have to talk about it. I've actually started a whole other podcast just about that. But when you talk about AI, you seem very pragmatic, curious, and not like a lot of people I think are like, I think there's a conflation of some of the layoff stuff that's going on with the arrival of AI. I don't know if that's correlation and causation thing there, but anyhow, regardless of that, you just mentioned a couple of use cases for AI. Like I think the first thing, it's a generative AI. That's the thing that's taken over the world right now. So that idea of just creating content, but you mentioned like creating better briefs or things like that. How else are you looking? Like, where do you see the leverage and the impact opportunities for AI in your little content design operation?
Yeah. I mean, I think there is potential for AI to help with almost all parts of content design, honestly, including leadership. I just saw an article this morning about how like it was written in a bit of a scandalous way. Some leaders at a company admitted that they used ChatGPT to write all the performance reviews for their direct reports, and that's technically not allowed, yada yada yada. But definitely that discourse is happening. I think I want to start small. I think when we start small, I also teach a lot on the side, and I've been teaching a lot of writing, not just content design, but also copywriting, creative writing, effective writing. And so many people come to me and they ask, Nicole, I really don't enjoy writing. I'm never happy with my writing. How do I become a better writer? And I used to spend a lot of resources trying to motivate them and just build their confidence, because that's really what it's about. You'll become a better writer when you get more confident in how you write. And I actually think generative AI is great at helping with that step of increasing and building your confidence in your writing. Because there's so many exercises you can do, like I often ask students, hey, write like one paragraph about something you did yesterday, or sometimes it's a more specific question, and then pop that into ChatGPT or another AI and ask it to just rewrite it in Hemingway's voice, or rewrite it in the voice of a 4-year-old, or like just play with those different voices. And quickly they're like, wow, like, so like the small little changes that you see when something that you originally wrote gets like changed into like another voice. That's like a really great exercise. And it makes people more aware of how they are writing, but also the things they like about their writing versus what they don't like about their writing. So I think on the smallest scale, I think it's great for that, for people to just be less afraid of writing, of creating content, and getting that out of the way. And so to kind of go into that second part of your question, where you talked a little bit about there's been a lot of layoffs going on. Is that connected to AI? Is that not connected to AI? Essentially, will the AI take our job? I personally don't think so. I think that AI actually has great, great potential to make us more effective at our jobs, to make our jobs easier. Honestly, I always say I would love for the AI to take my job, because I would like to spend more time doing other things that I find fun, like running or pottery. But of course, we live in capitalism and we can't like actively want the AI to take our jobs because we need to get paid. But I do think there's great potential for the AI to take away a lot of these repetitive tasks that we maybe don't enjoy, so we can spend more of the time that we're paid for on strategic thinking, general thinking, maybe even things like doing market research, spending more time with users, the things that are harder to do for an artificial intelligence that we should be spending more time on, but that are often down prioritized due to monetary reasons. Because I do think that eventually the AIs will be good enough to do a lot of the micro copywriting that a lot of us UX writers and content designers are still brought on for. And I think that's good news. So for me, in terms of looking into AI tooling now this year, that's something I'm focusing on, right? Like I'm talking to Writer, Acrolinks, and other tooling to figure out how can we use AI to help us scale microcopy requests, because it's really important for us. And specifically, since localization is also part of my team, how can we scale that maybe even across, well, we have over 25 markets, to make sure it's translated properly and we can really have that quality assurance all the way back to the English content design that we're doing. Yeah, I hope that answers the question a little.
Yeah, it does. Well, there's a lot in there too. Two of the things that you mentioned in there that triggered things in my mind is one, the notion that this is a business. We're stuck in capitalism. I mean, there is a creator economy out there. You could become a running or a pottery influencer and do that, but that's actually a viable thing now. But I think we all love this work too much to do that kind of thing.
Exactly.
But the other thing about that, you mentioned the people stuff, and I think that's where as AI comes along, I think the so much of the fuss coming out of Silicon Valley is just about like this imaginary artificial general intelligence that's almost here that is going to, that's going to replace people. And I think the two things you just said about one, these are just, it's just another kind of computer, another kind of tooling that can help us
Yeah.
and give us more time to do more like human stuff. And also, so I think keeping people at the forefront, like, and I think we would all identify as human-centered designers. And I worry that a lot of the AI fuss is getting people, AI focused designers is like, no, it's like it's still people that we're serving.
Exactly. And that's exactly the thing, because design is supposed to be human-centered. But when I think back, and over the course of my career, both in-house and as a consultant, I worked with so many, even of the like most design-forward companies out there. But the amount of time I actually get to spend with the people, with the users, with the people we're designing for, has been very, very limited. Because there's been so much to do with, writing microcopy, writing briefs, connecting with stakeholders, keeping everyone up to date, showing that impact, documenting, and all of those things are, of course, important. But here I definitely think the AI can support us so we can maybe spend more time with the people we're actually designing for. And for me, I think that's key to then the good design, well, of the now and specifically of the future, where then maybe we are going to have more content because everyone can create halfway decent copy and halfway decent microcopy. But then to really stand out, I think it really comes back to connecting very, very clearly with the people who we actually want to use our products and really, really nailing what they want to read, to see, to click in that moment.
Yeah, no, as you're saying that, you're reminding me that like I just had a little shudder of the anticipation of the flood of content that's already starting and it's going to just keep coming.
Yeah.
And I think about like Jerry McGovern and his top task analysis and like, the fact that so much of his work has resulted in like 90% of the content on a website going away. So like, but that just gets back to like I think, I don't know about your friend, but I feel like content strategy is still this foundational thing that underlies or should underlie almost everything we do. And one of those foundational things is like balancing user needs and business goals. And it's like, do users really need all that stuff? But at the same time, when you think about things like personalization or customized recommendation engines and things like that, maybe we do need infinitely more content to address very specific micro. Yeah.
I think so. And I specifically think it's interesting because like personalization specifically or very specifically to like what an audience is looking for is something we're very actively looking into um in my current position. And one of the things that has been limiting us is resources, right? Because I don't have the time with my small content design team to create tone and voice guidelines for like 12 different hypothetical audiences. So here this is definitely an opportunity for if we could get an AI to help us create these faster, to help us test these faster, to help us scale these guidelines specifically then, because that's often where, a large chunk of the work then also happens. I think that would be a great benefit, and we could actually significantly improve the product experience with very specific personalization. I still think when companies talk about personalization these days, it's still so tied to just, oh, when do we show which ad, or where maybe we move a button here and there, but it's still very few companies are very good at personalizing, for example, the look and feel, the tone and voice. And this, I think, is something that I'm very excited about and where I definitely think with AI, we can finally get there. And then maybe, I don't know, if I'm on a certain diet, let's say I'm on keto, or in my case, I'm gluten intolerant, and I log into my food delivery app, it is actually already tailored to me in terms of what it shows me, in terms of the language, in terms of all of those things. And it's not just another filter I can tap at the top, but it's like the whole experience is just tailored to that. That's something I'd love to see. And I think that definitely AI is the way that we can get there in terms of resourcing.
Yeah. And one of the things you just mentioned, for example, that personalization down to the UI experience, because you can feed a sketch into some of these like ChatGPT now, and it'll give you like HTML and CSS to render that as a web thing. So it's not a big leap to picture like GPT, swarms or agents, farms or whatever you call these new collections of GPTs that can put that kind of thing together. That kind of gets, but the fact that just that you're thinking about personalization is it, because I don't think a lot of places are, and I think you're right that almost everything I've seen that is about personalization has been about marketing and advertising, not so much about user experience personalization. Have you seen examples of it? Are you looking around as you explore your personalization goals, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've not seen like examples at like a huge scale yet, to be honest. And at least the way we're looking at it for us, it's like one of the main like bets. It's like a very big thing that goes across the entire company, and it's a very slow project in that sense. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's challenging for me. In the beginning, when this whole personalization initiative kicked off, I was like the only content designer involved in this, and it was very difficult to really get to the bottom of what are we building, why are we building it, how are we building it, like what are we benchmarking towards? Because there's not that much you can benchmark towards yet. Um, so yeah, we're still, I mean, been working on this for months now, but I still feel like there's still so much further we can go. We have a couple of kickoffs coming up soon where we're going to talk more also about personalizing the product narrative based on what kind of person you are. Because usually products, they have one product narrative, right? And then sometimes you have one for B2C and B2B, but it rarely goes beyond that. But we're really rethinking like maybe the narrative should be different based on who you are. So that's something that together with a couple of designers, I'm very like eager to explore more, and we already kicked that off a little bit in the last year. And this is definitely something, yeah, where AI can help me scale this because I can, write documentation much quicker. I've also started using AI for meeting notes. It's actually so good at that, saves so much time. It's really nice. And then to really digest workshops. Also, we try to do a lot of workshops and collaborative work. And then, no one wants to document a workshop after like an 8-hour workshop day. But you can use AI and it's actually really good at pulling out the main points. Or even to-do listing, things like that. So it's basically already started to make my day feel more personalized to me.
Yeah, well, no, because it's like, as Nazir Bina says, we all have 10,000 interns now. They're not super bright. They're just out of college, maybe out of high school, but they can do a lot of stuff. And if you give them the right guidance, you can get a lot of those details taken care of. And one thing you just mentioned, I just want to, because one of my goals in this podcast is I try to talk to people across all kinds of content practice. And some of that product content personalization of a sort has been happening for decades in the technical support documentation world with like data formatted documents that, or not documents, but like componentized content management systems that have like, okay, and I don't know what exactly, I think it's a different thing in probably UX product design, but in that world, it's like, okay, you have this particular version of this product that was customized for your organization in this way. And there are systems that can do that. So just in terms of the technical implementation of that, it's not, I don't know that it's been done the exact way that we would need it in a content design context, but anyhow, I'm super curious about the confluence of other practices now around this, and I think AI is kind of bringing that in because it can do so many different things. These are large learning models; they know a lot of stuff, and they can bring in a lot of other insight. And when you said, like, for example, writing briefs, like, how have you compared like your personally word crafted brief versus what a generative AI agent can do?
Yeah, and I think the interesting part here is just for me, I say this in a lot of situations with a lot of different angles, but for me, it's always my personal bias is so strong, always. Like, I think I write such good briefs. It's controversial, but I'm very judgmental about other people's briefs. I'm like, how bad is this brief? Like, has no one taught you how to write a good brief? It's not that hard. But then it's so funny sometimes when I ask the AI to write a brief, I actually think they're quite good. I think they're potentially better than mine because they're a little bit more neutral. And even when I write a brief, it's actually really hard to not, for example, when you're writing a user research brief, right? To go in with like a very strong personal bias and then design the user test in a way that confirms your bias. But the AI can really help you neutralize all of that. So that's definitely something that I've been using it for. And when I compare it to my briefs and the briefs of the AI and even the briefs of others, where I think there's a lot of learning there. So yeah, I definitely think so.
Yeah, that's so. You reminded me a couple things when you were just talking there. That like one of the earliest applications, the earliest, I don't know if they were they weren't GPTs, but they were like, I guess probably NLP agents. But like formulaic journalistic stuff has been done, like sports and financial reporting and things like that. There have been tools, AI assistants to do that kind of writing for 6,
Yeah.
8, 10 years. It's been around a long time, and briefs are in that category, I guess I would say, of like kind of, well, kind of formulaic, because they're not to a strict template, I don't think. But anyhow, I think that kind of gets at the kind of thing that AIs are good at. What do you think they still need? Well, two things about that. The other thing that occurred to me there is like they have to be trained. They're learning models, and we are the people with the subject matter expertise to train them around writing stuff.
Yeah.
Are you getting into that with your explorations of AI? Like,
Yeah, we're definitely thinking a lot about how to train the AI, specifically when it comes to things like learning our glossaries, tone and voice. This is now specific to content design. I think the other challenge, of course, is, well, safekeeping information. I mean, I think most companies are very aware of this. Don't input certain information into the AI. Some companies don't want you to use it at all because they're so afraid of what will happen. So I think that's definitely something that we just need to still figure out as we work with it, like what can we input and how. So that's definitely something. And then the other thing just is I think it's really important to be transparent about it. And it's a little bit like we spent a lot of time over recent months creating like guidelines for how to use AI and how to label content that you've used AI for, because we want to be transparent there. But then also I think about the fact before AI, the big shift maybe was Google or like search engines. And we don't label that we've used Google to help us understand how to do something or write something, right? So I do think eventually this AI transparency will maybe also go away again. But I think in the beginning now, where companies are still figuring it out, I think it's also still really important to be transparent. I'm also still in a position where I want to be transparent. Like I want my team to know, hey, by the way, AI helped me write this. Just in case it's total shit, they can't blame me. So it's a little bit also of
that's good. You can delegate a lot of stuff to your AI.
exactly.
If it's crappy, it wasn't me, it was a stupid machine. Yeah, no, that's great.
Someone's gonna be like, "Who wrote this shitty error message?" Oh, sorry, it was the AI.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that as the CYA GPT. Yeah, no, that's too great. Wait, you just said, oh, about back to transparency. That's one of the things just in general in like just in product content. You think of like the work of everybody from like all the work that like folks Stephanie Lucas at LinkedIn and the work that Lisa Jennings Young did back when Twitter was a thing around so much of that trust that they work towards is around that notion of transparency. And like you just said, I love that insight that none of us say, I researched this on Google. That's sort of like one level. But down to like, yeah, but ChatGPT helped me draft this or write it. Like, have you thought about that threshold of where you might want to attribute? Or
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think it's a little bit. I actually think it's gonna go away because, like you said, I mean, I specifically remember when I was younger and I started working. So many of the people that got impressed with my skills, I always felt got impressed with my skills because I was quick to have answers. But the reason I was quick to have answers is that I've always been very eager to learn. So I would just sit down and I would research stuff and then I would practice it a little bit. And then I would have a good answer. And, how much do I credit Google for giving me the resources? And how much credit do I get for actually sitting down and making that effort instead of asking my colleague to give me the answer, right? So it's a little bit there because even when it comes to using the AI, you need to think about how much do I credit the AI for producing something I can use versus me actually learning and knowing how to prompt the AI to give me something useful. So I think it's actually very similar, yeah, very similar kind of starting point. Yet with the AI, we're much more aware of wanting to be transparent. So I don't know. I think it's a very interesting discourse, but my gut feeling tells me that transparency aspect is going to go away eventually as we get really used to incorporating it.
because like you said, it's like nobody would ever think to attribute Google for the research that they've done. So that makes sense. I'm really curious, and the part of my curiosity around it too is like around the attribution stuff. Like if you just go to an LLM and ask it to like give you a list of, like I've done this, give me the list of the top 10 content strategy podcasts and who wrote them. And it's just gibberish. It's like it has Rahel Bailey hosting the Content Strategy Insights podcast. And it's like stuff like that. So you can't rely on them. So I think it's important. Anyhow, it's just really interesting to keep that trail of something like provenance of the idea as we run through these gadgets. But at the same time, you talked earlier in the conversation about your writing, teaching, and coaching. That like that's the worst fear in the world is for any writer, even probably like John Grisham or Barbara Kingsolver. They look
Yeah.
at a blank page and go, "Oh crap, what now?" And you just go, "Oh, I'll just ask Chat GPT," and then you're off. And that was so you would never like that's a level you would never attribute. But if you like write a whole story with an AI, yeah,
Yeah, exactly. No, and I mean, I think when it comes to storytelling specifically, the AI, by the way, is still not really there, or maybe I am not good enough at prompting it yet. So I'm not too worried about that yet. I'll be honest, I've really mostly used AI for very work-related things. I do a lot of creative writing on the side still, and I haven't used AI for that yet. Maybe I'm I'm not seeing it yet.
yeah. No, what I had a guest on the AI podcast who one of the ways he prototyped his work and tested things out was by using AI to write bedtime stories for his kid.
That's pretty
Yeah.
good.
So and then I just saw a social media post disparaging that very practice the other day. I thought that was kind of anyhow. That's not very kind. But hey, that's something that kind of reminds me of something we talked about before we went on the air. There's been a couple of incidents, and I don't want to talk in specifics about any of this stuff, but I do want to talk about kind of like and back to transparency as well. Like we're both quite transparent about our operation in this field in this world. And there's been things like it people calling other people out at conferences or people making assumptions about things in the field because of just stuff you read on social media. Sorry for vague posting about this, but I wanted to talk just in general about like being like kind and considerate and professional to one another as we share all this kind of stuff. Because I think AI is just going to introduce, I think, another level of snarkiness is one of
Yeah,
my concerns. Can you
definitely.
talk a little bit about that? Like your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can even be specific, at least in my case. I know you're mostly referring to other things now. But I have a very specific example. Last year, sometime I posted an article that I didn't think was going to go viral the way it did, which was titled "I know why I no longer believe in content design." Which is funny because I posted that like just a couple of months after becoming a content design lead officially for the first time in my career. Um, and most people totally understood this article for what it was, which was calling out some of the issues we have in the field that we're still struggling to solve and address properly. And the main reason I wanted to write about it is to show people, hey, you're not alone. Because of the podcast I run, I get a lot of messages every week from people who are so sad. They're just like, I feel like I've been trying so hard, but maybe I'm not trying hard enough. They don't see my work. I can't get them to set up content design metrics. I'm worried about my job, was of course becoming more and more part of that narrative as the layoffs kept happening. So the main reason I wanted to write this was to confirm, hey, yeah, this is real. We're all going through it, or a lot of us are going through it. And I think it's important that we talk about it. I was really happy because that article got a lot of people to read it that were actually in design leadership that reached out and that were very grateful that someone put it down that way so they could be more supportive of their content designers. So in that way, I think it has had some great impact. For me personally, the impact wasn't so great because there were a couple of people in the industry that got pretty pissed off at this article that felt like I was shit talking content design. There were some semi-personal attacks. I mean, the funny thing is, no one like actively attacked me, but there was a lot of debate and discourse happening on various social media platforms and podcasts talking about the article and me without, asking me for my opinion, but just kind of, with their interpretation. That was rough, honestly, because, you know me quite well. Um, I'm a very, very caring person. Like all I've done specifically in the field of content design, I've done for free. I've never gotten paid for anything except, maybe one or two conference talks, but the podcast runs without ads. It's completely free. All of the articles are right. None of it is ever paywalled. I just put it all out there. I respond to so many messages, people asking for help finding jobs, portfolios, and forth. And I do that because I'm passionate and because I think I have like a lot of things to share that maybe haven't been shared before. So to be kind of attacked in such a way, or maybe attacked is too strong of a word, but to be viewed in such a way as someone that just doesn't understand the discipline or wants to, shit on some of the things that have been done, that hurt. Like, I got really, really offended, I have to be honest. I'm still a little bit meh about some of these people where I feel like, hey, you should have definitely reached out to me before doing a whole debate on your platform with another person about this, trying to like, talk badly about this. So that was rough. And I've been seeing since this happened to me, maybe I've also been more open to seeing it happen to other people. So there's been a lot of discourse. I think it's natural. There's rough times, right? The AI is coming, like we talked about. There's been a lot of layoffs. Content design has been hit relatively hard. I mean, I would argue most of design has, to be honest. And there's been a lot of talking about what's going on. So I do think people are more vulnerable and it's easier to get offended and it's easier to get scared. Again, I did not want to fear monger at all with this article. And that's also not what the article is about. It's very much about calling out, this is what I'm seeing. This is how we can fix it. This is how we can all help each other fix it. So I felt like it was very productive. But yeah, since then, I've noticed that some people in the field have started completely avoiding me. They're kind of pissed off at me. And that makes me really sad because I'm not out here trying to sell something. I'm out here trying to actually help from the goodness of my heart. And I have also other things to do. And I think the thing that hit me the hardest was just the amount of people that came out and said, oh, like she just doesn't know better because, yeah, she doesn't work for like, she's not leading content design at a big FANG, or she hasn't done it for 20, 30 years, or like, which is rough because, yes, I work in Europe, but I've worked for some of the biggest product companies in the US, as well as in Europe, as well as for startups, as well as for tiny companies, as well as for very traditional companies. I've worked for SSAB, like one of the biggest like steel producers out here. I've really seen and done content design from all angles and in all industries and in all places pretty much. And I can tell you that I think I understand what's going on. But I will also confirm a lot of the issues that I've called out aren't as bad as a big popular product company that has a much more mature design org. But the majority of us content designers don't work at a company with a mature design org. And I think we all know that. However, a lot of the thought leadership comes from people that work at very mature design orgs. And it's just not the reality for a lot of us. And I think it's important that we address that more and that we talk about it and that we give people a chance who have just a lot of the advice they get, it can't even apply to their position because the design org as a whole, or maybe even the product org in the worst case, is just not there. So that's why I'm so open and active. I want to talk about all these things to help people see, hey, like, you've gotten this advice, or like, this is what the best practice from that side says, but it may not apply to you. But yeah. That was a very long-winded way of answering your question. The essence is we're all human, and even though a lot of us only interact online, we should all be a little bit nicer.
Yeah. And I think this is why I wanted you on the podcast, because you model the passion and the compassion that we all have for this craft and trade and profession and all the people. And I think, I don't know, in general, this profession is so loving and collaborative and connecty and helpful. And I think the fact that that's sort of an outlier, but the fact that it impacted you so personally, that bothers me. But I think that's my hope, is that we can all just be, but I also appreciate a lot the equanimity that you bring to this. So like you could easily get like pissy about it, but you're just like disappointed, which I think is probably, that's how it feels to me. So thank you for sharing that. I can't believe we're coming up close to time already, Nicole. These conversations always go way, way, way too fast. But before we wrap, is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
No, I think like we covered like there's honestly tons of things we could talk about. We could probably do like one of those. There's this podcast in Germany, I always forget what it's called. But essentially the whole concept is they have a guest and they keep recording until the guest says some code work and then it just stops. And some podcasts run like 6 hours, 13 hours, and they just keep talking until the guest decides, okay, now I've said everything, and they do their code word. I think that's really interesting. I would love to try out like that format someday when we all have extra time. But yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about the most important things. I think to anyone that is out there right now, out of work, looking for work in content design, or even there's still so many people that are still eager to break into content design and have it really hard right now. I just posted on LinkedIn yesterday about like, does anyone have internships? Because I have so many people asking for content design internships in my inbox. Hang in there. I think it will get better again sooner rather than later. There's a lot you can do in the meantime to keep up with your skills. And always remember, it's not about you. It's boom and bust, and it's not your fault. And it'll, get better again. And I'm sure you'll find a great job.
Thanks so much. Oh, hey, one very last thing, Nicole. What's the best way if folks want to connect or follow you online?
Yeah, I mean, I post a lot on LinkedIn and Medium. If you're more into like writing, I post a lot of articles there. You can find me Nicole Michaelis, Nicole Alexandra Michaelis. And then I have the Content Rookie Pod, contentrookiepod.com, where I've been like slow with uploading. I think last year I only did like 5-6 episodes, but it's still coming every now and then. I just don't have a set schedule. So I would recommend that. I used to be active on Twitter, but I can't do that anymore. It's only bots there. So yeah, LinkedIn.
Okay, I'll include that in the show notes as well. And also, I just want to give you not a pass, but like you're a new mom. It's like it's understandable that you're not cranking out every week like I am. So
Yeah, thanks.
none of us are disappointed in you for that. So thanks so much.
Oh,
Thank you so much, Nicole. Always great talking.
thank you, Larry. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening. If you can think of a friend who might enjoy this episode, please share it with them. And please join us again for our next content strategy interview.